Greetings, beloved. Thank you for joining us today. Have you ever wondered why so many women are not equipped for marriage? It's because being a woman does not make you a bride, no more than being a woman makes you a mother. As with so many things in life, there's a process that leads us to our desired end. If your desired end is to be a bride according to biblical standards, then you have tuned in at the perfect time. Chapter 2 of the book of Titus tells us that the aged women should take the younger women through the process of becoming not just brides for a day, but brides for a lifetime. So stay tuned for more of Bridesmaid with me, your host, Renee Bolden. Greetings to everyone. Always good to see you all. And we are going to go ahead and get started with our discussion. So I think last week or week before last, sometime maybe a little bit in both weeks, we were talking about um, quite a bit about how much we need our husbands, our male authority. Of course, more specifically, just kind of gearing it towards husbands. And I think, what was the name of that? Unrestricted love. How important it is for us to realize just how much we need our man, whoever that might be that the Lord has for us. It's so important. And I know I was kind of reflecting over that throughout the week at different times, thinking about how so many women are missing out on something that they desire so greatly, which is to have a fulfilled relationship, with their husband. Just thinking about the sad state of society and how so much has changed where, women at one time knew that they needed a man and did not think it was a weak thing to think that. It was very widely accepted that we women needed men, men need women, in the sense of being complete, the complete picture of what God intended for marriage to be. Obviously, we can't be married by ourselves. God placed us here for a reason. He gave us somebody very specifically. For us, we were made for somebody very specifically, and so we think about those things, and it's really sad how far away we've gotten from just that mindset that was so widely accepted at one time, and how detrimental that has been and will continue to be to the structure of the family if we don't, especially professing believers, if we don't really grasp that, if we don't accept it and desire it. As I said, last week, I think that was last week, that, it's one thing to acknowledge something, it's one thing to acknowledge that you know something, but to desire it is a completely different aspect, because I can know a lot of things, but it doesn't make me necessarily desire it. And I think that's the state that a lot of women are in. They have listened to some evil, wicked spirit, I would say, maybe whispering through the mouth of another person, who said that, marriage isn't all that it's cracked up to be, or I wouldn't want to be in that position of, having to submit to somebody, and, so on and so forth. And, unfortunately, it's a deception, because a lot of those same women, as we have noted before, they will go to a job and work 40 to 60 hours a week, and they're submitting to somebody who's not even committed to them, somebody who's not committed to making sure they have food on the table or a roof over their head or children. Um, there and it's, again, it's a deception, and it's really, really sad that we have come to that. But I stand very firm. I stand very bold in what I said last week. I am not ashamed of it. I am proud to know who I am in the Lord. I am proud to embrace my identity as a woman. I have no I have no hesitations about saying that I need my husband. None whatsoever. I don't feel slighted. I don't feel oppressed. I do not feel like I got the short end of the stick in any way whatsoever to say that I need him. It has been quite a joy to me. The more I have just kind of let myself go, as I said, the more peaceful life has become. The more I have gotten into him, the more I've been able to find out who I really am. Because in the world, I spent, and when I say outside of the truth, I'll just say that outside of the truth and outside of our marriage, which are synonymous because I came into the truth and then married him shortly after. So, outside of our marriage and outside of the truth, I spent all of that time trying to figure out who I was and what I wanted and what I liked. And I would try something and then that wasn't fulfilling, and I try something else and that wasn't fulfilling. So, it feels really good to have a firm foundation. It feels really, really peaceful to not go through day in and day out trying to figure out, well, who am I today and what do I like today? And the way that plays out for women is always getting involved in something or something new. Usually it's going to be outside of home, but sometimes it can be in the home. Some new hobby, some new project. Sometimes that project is a man. Unfortunately for women, they scope out some man who they think they can help and they can raise him up somehow. Sometimes it's a new group of friends, sometimes it's a new job, sometimes it's going on vacation. But we do all these things trying to figure out, who am I? What do I like? And again, I simply cannot be ashamed of, I simply cannot back down from the idea that I've lived that life. I tried it. I did that. It was unfulfilling. There was a void. It didn't feel very good. And so now that I'm on the other side of that and I have lived another life that's the opposite of that, where I do feel secure in who I am. I feel secure in my relationship with the Lord. I feel secure in my marriage. I feel secure in the life that I live, period, just overall. I don't, if nothing else changed in my life from this moment on, I could still be satisfied for the rest of my life. But knowing the God that we serve, He has so much more in store because He has surprised me to no ends to where He has to just with what He's already done. So I know that I can expect more, but I'm content with what I have already been blessed with. And I just truly invite women to really get back to this mindset. Like I said, that was once acceptable. That, you know what, we really do need a man. And there's nothing wrong with that. Sometimes you hear people with a feminist mindset talking about women of old as if they didn't have a choice because of society, because society didn't make room for, women with jobs and, to have jobs and be independent and things like that. But that wasn't every woman's experience. I don't even venture to think that was the majority of women's experiences, because if we look at the fruit of what society was like, the types of families that were being produced, the types of marriages that were in place, I don't think a lot of those women, the majority of them, were unhappy with the arrangement of being cared for, being loved, being secure, having children, having a family, and seeing their family strengthened by the presence of a husband and a wife, mother and a father being present, and seeing their children grow up and become just simply productive citizens in society, just good, decent people. I don't know what that is to be mad about. Do you know that women could have chosen to just stay at home, never be intimate with a man, never have children, and they could have just stayed at home with their parents. But many of them chose not to. Some people, I'm sure, had bad experiences because you know what? We all often do when we are pursuing a life outside of Christ. That just comes with the territory. And then we sometimes in Christ have bad experiences because the Lord has called for something for our lives and we're fighting against it, and it makes it a bad experience. Because if we will go with the flow and do whatever the Lord called us to do, we will obey whatever process He has for us to go through for our own growth, for our own blessings, for our maturity, for our stability, then we can enjoy that. We can enjoy whatever it is because we'll be resting in Him. We'll have faith in Him. So oftentimes, I believe people when they say they've had a bad experience, but my question is, why did you have a bad experience? Because oftentimes my attitude, more often than not, my attitude in a situation is going to dictate that experience. If I'm fighting and kicking the whole time, of course it's going to be a bad experience. There's certain songs I hear that take me back to a place in my life where at one time I would say, "Oh, that was such a horrible time." And now I think, "Oh man, I had such a horrible attitude at that time." See, I'm not blaming the situation that happened. I'm not even going to blame the people who were in the situation because every situation that was ever a bad experience for me, almost every situation that was ever a bad experience for me, if I had changed my attitude in it, it would have drastically changed my experience. And so when I look back on it now as a different person, I'm not thinking, oh, such a horrible time. I don't ever want to go to that city ever again in life. That's in my past and I'll leave it there. No, I thank God that, oh, I can see things a little bit differently now. That if I were faced with that situation again, I could have a different attitude and I could have a different experience. So I was just looking at myself. So in all of that, just thinking about how much we really do need men, I want to share a few examples of some of the things that happen when we as women don't think, when we don't really realize the way we need to, how much we really need a man. And this could be whether you're married or not married, because every wife is not really submitted to her husband. Every woman that's married is not necessarily living as a wife. Sometimes, it's just an arrangement for her and she's doing her own thing and just dealing with whatever consequences come with that. And so these examples that I want to share here in just a moment can be applied to either if you're married or if you're not married. And I want to say that too, just while I'm mentioning that whenever we're gathered here, please resist the urge to say that, well, I'm not married now, so I don't need this right now. Or resist the urge to accept the thought that, well, I'm married and this isn't happening in my marriage, so this isn't a big deal. I'll just put this in the vault for later. I think everything that we hear, every time we meet up, we need to take it seriously and we need to make it a part of our lives in that moment so that when the day comes and the situation arises, you're not scrambling for an answer. It's already a part of you. You've already taken time to meditate on it. You've already asked the Lord how to apply it in everyday life. So you're not caught off guard every time situations arise and then thinking after the fact, looking back in hindsight, oh, yeah, we did discuss that. I did have the answer, but because I didn't take it seriously at the time, it just completely went over my head. I completely failed the test when you don't have to because I did not take what was being said to heart and did not think that I would need it this soon. So here we go. The first two examples are about myself. And I think I was just talking about this earlier in the week. or it might have been last week. I can't remember now. I think it was earlier this week. That I, as a mother, I had a goal in my mind, and oftentimes we can have these great ideas and we can think, I want my children to grow up and be this, right? And we can fill in the blanks. I want them to be uh, servants at heart. I want them to have great attitudes. I want them to be successful in their employment or in their education. I want them to be really intelligent. I want them to get along with people. I want them to be reliable and dependable. I want them to just have good character and be honest and be trustworthy. All these different things. We can come up with a host of adjectives to describe what we want our children to turn out like. And we know that, as parents, we are looking at them as they grow, and we have to address different things. But sometimes, we as women, we have in our mind that something is going to happen a certain way. If I do this, then, this is the outcome I expect to see. And we can be completely oblivious to the fact that still to this day, we're talking about it yet again, that we don't have all the answers within ourselves. Too often, we as women make the mistake of consulting ourselves for the answer. We do it too often. So here goes. I, as a mother, I wanted to make sure our children, and of course, this is before my marriage now. But my thought was, and I was always thinking about, what do I do to get them to be this type of person? Ultimately, I thought that my example was supposed to be an example to them, right? So I thought, okay, I want them to be the type of children that love to serve people. And so, unfortunately for me, my thought was, well, if they see me serving, then they will automatically want to serve because they're following my example. They'll see me serving here. I'm serving them. I'm serving other people. I'm serving, as a volunteer at school. I'm serving in the church, in the community. So I'm doing things so they see me serving. Well, that failed. How do I know it failed? So I had a goal, and how do I know it failed? Because when I saw them as young adults, what I saw were children who were self serving and self entitled. So, as you all have heard me say, my husband had to explain to me, no, you get them to learn how to serve by getting them to serve you first. They're in the home with you all the time. So you get them to serve you first, and then that will extend out to other people. See, I didn't know. See, it took a man to help me understand that. I just thought, okay, well, if they see me serving, then they will eventually mature to the point that they're doing what I'm doing. It backfired. And so then what happened, of course, you'll have heard me say how the Lord told me when they came to be a part of the ministry, and I'm referring right now to our two oldest daughters, when they came to be a part of the ministry. And, my thing was, yes, get them here, get them to the truth. They'll hear the truth. The truth is going to change them. And the Lord was like, no, you're not going to put that burden on your husband to preach them into womanhood. You are going to go back and you're going to Titus to them to where they need to be. You're going to do what you didn't do in the beginning. And it didn't matter that I didn't know anything about Titus 2. The Lord was not concerned with that. You have a job to do, and it doesn't end just because they're adults. You're going to have to bring them back around. You're going to have to go back and show them what you could not show them before, what you did not show them before. You're going to have to show them where you got it wrong. So that was a fail. Another one, I thought, hey, it's community service, new experiences, extracurricular activities. You're going to broaden your horizon, broaden your your experience base, broaden, your ability to communicate. You're going to learn new things. So of course they're involved in extracurricular activities at school, involved in volunteer work at community service at the local thrift stores, visiting family, definitely involved in church. And so, in my mind, this is going to make them a well rounded person. Well, that failed also. It backfired because what it did was it just taught them to run the streets all the time. Can't appreciate just being at home. No, because we have to go here. We got to go to beta club. We have to go to um, basketball practice. We have to go to Bible study. We got to go to drill team practice. We have to go to church. We got to go to Sunday school. We got to go visit our grandparents. And before you know it, it's like, do we even live at home? No, we're always in the streets. And so we look at those things and we think these are all great things. Well, we have to find a way to compact all of that. Have them volunteer to go clean up the yard at the grandparents' house, and there's your volunteer family time and serving all in one. You don't have to split it up between 5 different organizations and places. Because again, see, a man would have been able to say, no, they need to be at home. They need to master cooking some meals and master cleaning the house. They don't need to be out doing all of this ripping and running. Service start at home. But that was my mind. I'll give another example of a lady who she wanted to teach her children to, and these were oftentimes her words, not be a burden to other people, aka independent. I'm going to teach you how to do all these things for yourself. Well, you know why that was a fail? Because when you have daughters that you're teaching not to be a burden, aka independent, they also don't know how to be a wife and be in a marriage and be able to depend on a man, which that is what they were made for. So it was a fail. See, daddies are right there to create a balance where mommy is teaching children to do things and he's going to be right there creating a balance where he's not letting them grow up too fast. That's how those little girls, they'll act like little babies, when it comes to daddy. They get babyfied. They want to be grown with mama. Well, they get real babyfied, when they're around daddy. But you see, it creates a balance there because we do have to teach them. But then we also don't want them to grow up too fast to where they're just becoming independent and their whole reason for learning is to get from under our authority. That should not be the goal. So that was a fail for her. There was another lady. She wanted to teach her sons. And again, you hear these things and okay, well, these are good things, to teach your children. We know that. But everything has to be done in balance and it has to be done according to God's will. That's why it's important for a man and a woman, a husband and a wife, mother and father to come together to parent these children so that it's not one-sided. So this particular lady, she wanted to teach her sons, to maintain good hygiene and which is a good thing. Okay, bathe. I'm gonna show you how to dress and do all these things and keep your clothes up, so on, whatever the case may be. Well, unfortunately, because there wasn't a man involved in that process, she could only do it from the perspective of a woman. So you know what happens when a woman is teaching a young man how to maintain his hygiene and all of that? Well, I'll tell you what happens. He gets introduced to this male vanity that could lead to effeminate ways where he's spending more time in the mirror than his woman. That shouldn't be the case. When I was growing up, I don't know if it was my uncles or cousins. I remember seeing men shaving. My husband was just talking about him, memories of his father. They take that little brush and lather the shaving cream on their face and, take the razor and shave. And the wife ironed the clothes and laid them out for them. And that was the amount of time that they were spending on themselves. They were not vain. They were manly. They were not vain. They were not putting all this emphasis on how they look. All the time growing up, what I saw was women did the shopping. Okay, you need this, I'm doing the shopping for you. Okay, I'm gonna shop and I'll get you some more work pants or some more shoes or whatever the case is. Men didn't spend a lot of time on that kind of thing. They spent time in the yard. They spent time on cars, spent time working. They spent time doing manly things. When I was growing up, I, just kind of overhearing women talking things like that, women understood. I'm gonna just use this as an example. If their husband left out of the house with wrinkled clothes on, that looked bad on them. Oh, you're not taking care of your husband. Why is your husband's clothes wrinkled? Why didn't you iron them? That's what I would hear older people saying to younger. What? The man wasn't all into clothes, so he wasn't making sure they were starched up, and that wasn't his thing. But what happens is if a woman, from because all she has is a female perspective on how to maintain your hygiene. When she does that without the balance of a husband, because that husband is going to be saying, okay, you got 10 minutes to brush your hair, shave, do whatever you need to do. I imagine cutting hair might take a little bit longer, but it shouldn't take our sons an hour to get ready and our daughters 15 minutes to get ready. That's backwards, which is something else we were talking about, spending time, but we're not going to get off into that. But that just should not be the case. But when it's a female perspective, that's what you get. So that's a fail, because it's never, the goal is never to effeminize our sons. So again, we need that man there, to say, hey, those pants are too tight. You need to get a wife, get him the next size up, order the next size up so those pants aren't clinging to him. That's not the way we wear our pants. We need, and that's what fathers are there for. We need that because, as women, we could never look at a man or a young man from a male perspective. So what we might think is cute, that's just it. It's cute, and cute does not belong on boys. Yeah, cute is for girls. And so we have to keep those things in mind, that it takes a man to be able to look at something and say, no, you don't need to wear that anymore. Don't. Where did we buy that from? And can we return it? That shirt color is too light. Get him a darker shirt. That kind of thing. The other another one that it kind of goes in line with this, but it's not the vanity of dressing. But this, lady, she had a problem with her husband. She felt like he was angry, aka manly. And she wanted to make sure that her children, her sons, did not become angry young men. And, this idea of loving on them and hugging them all the time and expressing, how much they mean to her, and getting them to express back, mommy, I love you. And, just, it was a bit much. But, well, in the quest to keep them from being angry, aka manly, you're only giving them one other option, and that's to be effeminate. The last thing a son needs is his mother leading him through an emotional journey so that he can be in touch with his emotional side to appease her whenever she's having a bad day, because that's really what that boiled down to. If I can't get daddy under my emotional spell, then at least I can get the sons, and you all will hug me and you will comfort me on the days that you see me looking sad. And It's unfortunate, but it is very real, very, very real. And so obviously, again, that was a fail in her mind. My goal is to keep you from becoming angry, but that's not what's actually happening. Another example is a lady with her children. You know, she wanted to. She made it a point to give them freedom beyond their level of maturity, and it was as a convenience to her, which a lot of parents unfortunately do that. You know what? Okay, I need some time alone. If I don't put you in front of a television or a computer or video game or something, you're going to be bugging me all day. So, you know what? Here, take this. I'm not monitoring you. I'm not trying to see if something is popping up on the screen. I'm just nothing. I'm just go ahead. As long as you're quiet and I have my peace, I'm fine. So the goal, maybe her goal was to have some time alone and pacify the children, except she allowed them to have freedom beyond their level of maturity. And by the time they were 14 years old, she didn't have any control over them. Why? Because you've already introduced them to a whole new world. You've already given them the impression that it's okay for them to live life without you. You've already, by default, taken them from under your authority and given them over to the television, the game console, the movie, whatever it is they're doing. Oftentimes, it's going to be online chat sites and things like you've just given them over. Why? Because I have my peace. I don't have to worry about anything because I know that you're right there in front of that computer or you're right there in front of the TV with the movies. One of our daughters was always she just wanted to get lost in movies all the time. She could just watch movie after movie after movie, and we're like, oh no, no ma'am, you're gonna find something else to do. No ma'am, you cannot just watch TV for hours and hours and hours. There's plenty of other things to do, But if we had allowed that, she would have done it. We look at these things, so of course, as parents, we're supposed to have control over our children, meaning they're not supposed to think that they can just do whatever and don't expect us to say something about it. We're supposed to have some level of authority over them that they understand. It's not supposed to be blurred lines and, they think we're friends and things like that. And as I said in that scenario, and these are real life scenarios, I'm not just making things up. I could put names and addresses to these people and actual more details in the situation of how badly this stuff turned out. But the point is, oftentimes we as wives, we think that we know how to reach a goal, but without having the balance of our husbands, we are failing at it. It doesn't turn out right. So when I say we really need to understand how much we need them, it is of the utmost importance that we get that we desire it, not just understand it. And this one last example I am going to share, I was reminded of it from a conversation that I had. I spoke to my mother on the phone just about a week ago. And while we were on the phone, I think she was already out in public when I called her because I was, calling to ask her a couple of questions, and she was already out, I think, going to the grocery store or something. And I heard her say something along the lines of, oh, okay, I see somebody else. No, I wonder what he's stopping this person for. Well, I guess they'll give him a ride. I'm just hearing her say this. I guess they'll give him a ride as long as he don't come over here hitchhiking to go in my direction. Well, that's good. Looks like somebody else is doing whatever. And then she goes on to say, something along the lines of how long he and his brother had been hitchhiking. Without her saying a name, I automatically knew who she was referring to. And I called the mother's name and I said, oh, is that Miss So-and-so's sons you're referring to? She was like, yeah. She said, she died, just about a year ago. And I'll tell you why I knew who she was referring to. I can remember when I was 5 years old, we actually used to go by their house. We used to spend the night at their house. I can remember eating watermelon, fresh. I mean, picking watermelons out of the yard, eating fresh greens being picked out of the yard, cabbage. They would go catch fish, fried fish, and that's what we were eating for dinner. That's why I remember that. So we would be over there a lot, so I remember them. And I imagine because I was about 5, I'm thinking maybe the two sons that I specifically remember they must have been about 18, 19, 20 years old. They were young. Of course, to me at that time, they looked like grown men, but I would imagine they were maybe somewhere around 20 years old. And they were walking around town then, hitchhiking rides, getting they would just literally walk the street and they just hold their thumb out. They wouldn't even look back to see who was in the car or anything. They would just hold their thumb out, and if somebody stopped, they jump in the car, and it didn't matter which way. And I think that was her joke about it. She was like, even if they're going north, if you're going south, they'll just get in the car with you and go. So I remember that at 5 years old. I can remember riding the school bus in middle school, and I still saw them walking, hitchhiking. I don't, as far as I know, they never ever got married or had children. I'm not sure if they ever even held a job. If you were ever around them, because I had run into them, as an adult, I had run into them like in the store or outside of a store or something. They usually either were staggering like they were drunk or just smelled like they had been drinking. In high school, I still was passing by these people hitchhiking, holding their thumb out for rides. In my adulthood, I still saw the same thing. And I asked my mother when I verified who it was. I was pretty sure that's who she was referring to. And she was like, "Yep, that's them." And I said, "What do you think happened to them? Like, how did they end up like that?" And you know what she said? I was so surprised at the simplicity of the answer. She said, "Lack of discipline, lack of accountability." And when you have the parents that say, "No, not my child," she said, that's what you get. Because their children couldn't do anything wrong. They didn't discipline when they needed to be disciplined. And then by the time they got out of hand, it was too late. They couldn't reel them back in. So do you think when that lady and her husband had those sons of theirs that they intended, that they thought, oh, we're going to train you up to not hold a job, to not be a husband to anybody, to not be in the condition to be a father to anybody, to not even be able to, because let me see, the last time I saw them walking, well, I was in my 30s, and so now what today? I'm 50 years old today, and not that it's my birthday, but on this day I am 50 years old, and they've been walking as far back as I can remember is when I was 5 years old. Do you think that the mother who got in the way of the father training them up to be young men thought that that's what their life was going to turn out like? I'm sure that was not the goal she had in mind. No, I'm going to protect my children. Nobody's going to mistreat them. Nobody's going to tell me that they did XYZ because no, not my child. No, I'm not going to discipline when you need it. I am just going to keep giving you grace and let you keep doing things over and over and over again. No, I'm not going to give you, I'm not going to whip you this time. No, I'm not going to fuss at you this time. I'm not going to do anything. I'm going to give you another chance to get it right. Well, you get so far down the line with that, and what you've said to your child is, there are no consequences for your actions. Somewhere in life, somebody's just going to give you whatever it is you need, and you don't have to answer to anybody. Nobody can tell you what to do. Just come run home to mommy, and I'll pacify you, and I'll give you something, and I'll send you right back out into the world. I'm sure they were not thinking that I'm going to have sons who are 60, 65, 70 years old who still has not so much as gotten a skateboard. You remember we talked about that? If you're walking, you ought to have a skateboard next week. Move up to a bike. Move up to a scooter or something. I'm sure that was not what she thought was going to happen. And oftentimes that's the life we live. We are making plans, we're doing things, we're protecting our children, we're not disciplining them, we're not holding them, making them accountable for even their thoughts, their actions. We're not doing our due diligence as wives, allowing ourselves to be submitted to our husbands so that we can parent together with him and not parent against him. We're not allowing ourselves to be of the mindset that we actually need our husbands. You know, there are some mothers, and this isn't even a mother-father story. This is an auntie-uncle story. Auntie and uncle had taken in their nephew. Nephew got to the point he didn't want to live in their house. He went on back to mom or wherever he had initially come from. And auntie was having a kind of a hard time really letting go, and so she was still treating him like, he was a son. Husband, uncle was like, you know what, you need to let the boy go, let him do, whatever he's gonna do. He's grown now. You can't mother hen him. So uncle was over it. Auntie's like, oh, no, 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 I got to help him. So what was auntie doing? Auntie was sneaking nephew money behind uncle's back. And auntie was buying computers and printers for nephew, and uncle didn't know. This is the type of thing that a wife can do to her husband because she has it all figured out about what it's going to take to make that child successful. And it couldn't be far from the truth, especially when it comes to boys. They are just about over us, right around 5 years old, they're done. If it doesn't happen sooner than that. And they know that they need somebody who looks like them and who knows what path they're on to be in their lives. They know, even if they can't express it, they know it. And they get frustrated with mothers who overstep those bounds and try to play daddy. How are you going to show me how to be a man when you're a woman? They know that because it's built on the inside of them. God made it that way. But so many of us as wives, we are so busy trying to save the children from big bad daddy that we don't know that we're pushing them out into big bad world, and they're not prepared because we've been trying to put bottles and pacifiers in their mouth the whole time. This is why it's important for us as wives to understand just how much we need daddy involved. We need to be submitted to our husbands. It is detrimental that we get it. It's not just a good idea, because in these scenarios, you think I'm telling you, I could not have fathomed the outcome that I saw, the level of self-entitlement in our two oldest daughters. And, you all know our oldest here, and she can tell you. We've had conversations about it, and I would tell my husband, I'm like, I don't understand what happened. I would have them doing X, Y, Z, X, Y, Z, doing this, doing this, doing this. But I missed it. I wasn't going to get it. I was not going to get it right because there was no man involved in that process. It was me consulting myself on how I would get them to be what God called them to be. And I can tell you, I read the New Testament over and over and over and over again before Apostle Bolden and I got married. I read the New Testament, and do you know, all the years I read the New Testament, I don't ever remember seeing Titus 2 in there. I don't ever remember seeing that in there. So I could not have imagined or fathomed in my wildest dreams that I would get the outcome that I did. I just could not have. And so when I looked at Titus 2, and I think, wow, that's something how I missed that. But I guess ultimately, I did not have a mind to even consult the word. Shirley wasn't consulting, uh, my ex husband wasn't consulting, my stepfather wasn't consulting any of my brothers. I was just doing it on my own. And of course, like I said, when I got around to it and I saw Titus 2, the Lord was like, no, that's your task. You're going to walk through this and you're going to teach them what it is they need. So, of course, we started down the road. We had a conversation recently, Modesty and I, about how there was a time when she went through a period where she was driving us. That was a part of that service. So many different things that we go through. And this is why it's important when you are doing something. See, everything is not going to be for a lifetime. So you need to learn the lesson while you're in that season. Because if you miss it, there's just no guarantee that you're going to get that situation back. You have to learn the lessons while you're in there. That's why it's important for us not to complain. It's important for us to be seeking guidance when we're going through things, not to just be turned into ourselves and trying to figure it out on our own. It is so important to do that so that we can get everything we are supposed to get out of, whatever season we're in. Because that season might only last 2 weeks. It might only last 2 months. It might not be years and years. And we can't afford to blink and it has passed us by and now we're not prepared to go into the next season, whatever that might be. And of course, for us as women, if you're not married, the next season is gonna always be marriage. So you think about everything that you need to learn, everything that you're going through, especially anything that makes something rise up on the inside of you that you want to fight it. I can just about guarantee you that one thing is preparing you for marriage. That very thing that you feel so much fight about is preparing you for marriage. And if you're already married, the next season is going to always be going to the next level. And I'm not saying that's the only season, but it's going to be a next. There's no such thing as being married and you just get comfortable and content in one place and you just don't ever go. It's going to always be something else that's meant to make you grow as a wife, that's meant to make you hold on a little bit more to your anchor, to be more anchored in the word, more anchored to your foundation. There's going to always be something there that's meant to help us go to the next level. And we have to be willing to do that. So what I concluded in all of this, because I can tell you, I can go on and on and on and on with examples of how women, with or without a husband, had in their minds that this is what's going to happen. And then they look at it and it's like, well, what is this? What is this creation that came out of what I was trying to do? Because this is not what I had in mind. This is not what I was trying to do. And oftentimes that's what's happening once we say I do. We say I do, and then we start to plant seeds in our marriage as a wife. And we think, oh, it's going to be like this. It's going to be like the Disney movies, the fairy tales. My husband is going to be worshiping me. He's going to think I'm the best thing since sliced bread. And you know what? He might. He might actually think that about you. But the way he expresses it is oftentimes going to be different from what you are expecting. And so what happens is we as wives, we go into marriage oftentimes and we think, oh, I'm going to marry the man of my dreams and we're going to have Two girls and two boys, a dog and a cat. We're going to have the white picket fence in the house on the hill. We're going to have two cars and a business and a 401k and vacation once a year. And then it's not quite playing out that way because wives will go into marriage with all of these things already in their minds and they don't even talk to their husbands about it and even find out what he thinks. See, your idea of an annual vacation might be going off to Paris every year. He might be thinking, well, let's go on over to Bolivar, Tennessee and go visit the grandparents. Let the children go off for a week so we can have some time for ourselves. That might be his idea of an annual vacation. And so you get those two in the mix, and it's like, well, wait a minute, what's happening? So then the wife is like, I'm disappointed. That's not what I had in mind for our life. That's not what I had in mind for our life. I had different plans for us. This is not how I thought we were going to be. And so you're disappointed, AKA offended, and then the offense starts to show up. Now you're holding back. You have restricted love. You have restricted submission. The meals aren't coming out as well. The children are not as structured. Everything just looks kind of chaotic. See, when you thought you were going to have, the children in the house and the pets and the vacation and all of these things, it was, yay, let's go. And when it began to materialize in a different way, oftentimes wives are getting offended because they, oh, wait a minute. I thought if I said I do, I will get my way. I thought if I never turned you down for intimacy, I would get what I want. I thought if I gave you children, I will get my way in it. I thought I would be able to get what I wanted in this situation. And oftentimes, wives are actually getting what they want. They're just not getting it in the manner in which they were thinking. And so now it's this offense and disappointment and this lack of effort being sown into the marriage. And all the while, the wife is thinking, well, I'm justified. Why? Because I deserve to be treated better. I deserve to have more than what you're giving me. I remember one time there was a couple that I knew, and they lived in an apartment. And the wife, they were saving money for a down payment on the house, and the wife was always just publicly complaining about her husband being tight and not wanting to spend money. It's like, we have X amount of dollars in the bank and he won't, I want to spend this amount. He won't let me. He was, she was, he's just so tight. And he would always, she was always saying that. And the point that she missed, he was saving the money for them to get a down payment on the house. So if I'm letting you spend it and chip away at it, we'll never get in the house. And this is what I mean when I say oftentimes wives are getting what they want. They're just not getting it quite the way they want it. And if they had been 10, 15 more years in the marriage, she would have been complaining, we don't have a house yet. We're still living in the apartment. This is why we need to follow men, because we will be all over the place. You complaining that he won't let you spend whatever amount of money here, and then on the back end when he done spent all the money that you wanted, you'd be complaining that you're still in an apartment and not in a house. So we have to allow our husbands to lead and come to the realization that too often, and I just think God designed it this way. He's not going to let us be super successful outside of male authority, because he designed us to come together, create a perfect picture, to live life in a certain way. And it doesn't happen with the absence of the male authority, with the male leadership, with the male love. We need that. Or we end up in these situations where we are so surprised at what product turned up at the end of our experiment, because that's what it is if we don't. And you know, the reason um, we end up in these situations is because we're not asking. We're not talking. We're not talking to people who have already accomplished these things. We're not talking to people who have lived before us. We are just simply trying to figure it out. And I can't tell you, that's one of the things that I will tell anybody, any young person. I think that was one of the biggest mistakes I made just as a person in life, not seeking counsel and guidance from people who are older than I am. That's the one thing I would change if I could go back. That's so I would talk more and ask more questions and ask for more guidance and things. I would tell somebody, "Hey, this is what I'm thinking about doing. What do you think about that?" I would ask somebody to give me a broader perspective, because too often, and as wives, we have husbands there, so we don't need to be fighting against them. We don't need to have our secret ideas about what we're going to do in life to bring about certain things, because it just doesn't turn out well when we do that. I just gave 7 examples, and I'm sure I could think of 107 more, that it does not turn out well when we are trying to be independent of our husbands and do these things on our own. You know, I was watching, no, I wasn't watching actually. I had the movie The Pilgrim's Progress on, and I just happened to pass by, and I watched this one scene of it. And this is where, I'm pretty sure this is when Christian had just escaped the lions, like they were right there, and he was banging on the door, let me in, let me in. And the man opens the door, and I think he had to say one more time, let me in or something. He was like, yes, come on in. And he's like, oh, finally, I made it. Yes, I made it. I never thought I'd make it here. And he was just rejoicing and rejoicing and rejoicing. He thought he had made it into heaven. And then the man was like, yeah, you got probably, I don't know precisely what he said. You got about 5 minutes to take off running because they're coming after you. He's like, what are you talking about? Wait, what do you mean? I thought this was the end of my journey. No, 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 no. You're just beginning. And that's where we as wives find ourselves a lot of times. We've done whatever until it was time to get to the altar, and we said, I do, and we've weathered through a few disappointments because we didn't get our way or something wasn't playing out. And, we call them hardships and obstacles and challenges, and we've overcome and we've hung in there with you. And we're like, okay, I made it. Now I'm here. I have arrived. Now I'm expecting everything that's due me because I've proven that I'm going to be here. And I'm telling you today that too many of us are thinking that we have arrived as wives. Too many of us are thinking that we don't have much more growth. I've already gone through quite a bit. I've learned quite a bit. No, you haven't. I'm saying today to you 2 things. You need leadership, and you need to understand that you haven't arrived. Your journey is just beginning. I don't care how long you've been married. I don't care how long you've been desiring marriage. I don't care how many men you think you've been with where you've gotten all this experience, or how many men you've been around, how many men you've interviewed and found out what they think, how many men you've observed. You are just beginning. And I'll tell you why you're just beginning, because every one of us in that message about unrestricted love, we could not even identify with how much we needed a man. So you have to get there. And then you can see the rest of the journey and enjoy the rest of the journey. You know, in the movie, Christian had this burden that he wanted removed from him. And he was so focused on getting this burden removed all throughout the journey. He's trying to take shortcuts. He's getting off the path, always calling for help, complaining and, thinking about going back and all. And that's the way we have been as wives. And then we get to a point and we want to give ourselves a pat on the back and say, "Oh, I made it." No, you're just beginning with the understanding, if you will not only acknowledge it but desire it, that I need my husband. I need him. And that's the beginning of the journey to us really becoming the wives that we need to become, and ultimately experiencing marriage the way we want to experience it. To be able to truly identify what the blessings are in marriage. Because as long as you don't need your husband and you don't need his leadership, you don't need his guidance, you don't need his love, you'll be just like the last wife that I talked about, complaining to people. He doesn't even let me buy whatever at the store. He won't touch that money in the savings account. We got all this money, and if I want to spend 10 extra dollars at the store, I can't because he won't let me spend it. We'll be complaining about the blessing. When we don't need him, everything he does just doesn't make sense to us. We don't see how that's going to turn out. But you know what? We also didn't see how our children were going to turn out when we were making all the decisions for them. And that wasn't turning out well. That was one of the things that I started to recognize, and I'm going to, end it with this. That was one of the things that I started to recognize in my relationship with my husband. Wait a minute, I said this. When you have this mindset, spiritual mindset, biblical mindset, scriptural thoughts about life, and you make decisions, you get all these good results. But when I've tried to do this with my mindset, even trying to apply scripture at times, it just did not turn out well. So I had a choice. I could keep going through life with him, and I could try to compete with him to prove I'm just as smart as you are, I'm just as spiritual as you are, and I can get just as many good results as you can. Or I could just deal with the reality that God made me the weaker vessel, and he made me a help that was meet for him, and I'm supposed to follow him and take on his mindset. And wherever I don't get it, I just depend on him to get it. That was my choice. Too often, too many women are making the choice to compete. I'm going to prove to you that I can get good results. I'm going to prove to you that I can come up with the right answer. I'm going to prove to you that I'm just as spiritually in tune as you are. And I'll just say that we're not. And we're not going to be. Because we're not going to make God a liar. If we could ever compete to the point of catching up and surpassing him, there would be no need for a godly order. He would not have been set as our authority. So we're not going to. So, as I stated last week, we can get off of that hamster wheel. And we can embrace our role. No, we can embrace our identity as godly women who are meant to be submitted to our husbands so that we can live life in abundance, and so that we may experience marriage in a way that words can't even express. That's the way I feel like there are not enough words in my vocabulary, and probably I would venture to say not enough words have been constructed in the English language for me to express the difference in the life that I'm experiencing, being in God's will, being married to whom I'm supposed to be married to, versus when I was out of God's will. It is a pleasure. It is a peaceful pleasure. It is such a nice experience that sometimes I feel guilty for it. And that's where we should be. And that guilt translates over into commitment and dedication to me taking advantage of every opportunity I can to tell somebody else about how to live that. That's what my guilt translates into the bridesmaid series, where we get to talk about, listen, I don't have no special favor from the Lord, but if you will obey him and follow and do what he has called you to do, you can have the same experience. But you have to obey. And I do not mean to, Kiana, I don't mean to put you on the spot. I'm gonna end it here though. This'll be it, and we'll talk about service. But I don't tell it to Kiana often, but you know, I talk to my husband about her, and I was just saying that, you know, I really thank God for him allowing us to see her growth and her maturity. And this is an example of what I'm saying. If we will obey, if we will do things the way the Lord is telling us to do it, we will see the benefits of it. Do you agree with that? Yes, I know she does. I don't mean to put her on the spot, but I'm just gonna say this as we close. We know that, you know, Kiana came, what was that? Was it 3 years ago the first time? About 3 years ago. And then, you know, she didn't stay a long time. She was like, just in all honesty, I need to get myself together. I don't want to play with the Lord. She came back and she was like, I'm ready to live for the Lord. I'm going to do whatever I have to do to live for the Lord. And from that moment, it's not that she didn't have to fight against the kingdom of darkness to stay. It's not that she didn't have to fight thoughts or anything like that. But we told Kiana some things that she needed to do. One was keeping in touch and talking to us all throughout the week, being accountable with her time, being accountable with her finances, not making decisions without asking us about it. I'm not, and even I'm gonna say this about the decision making because I don't want to paint a wrong picture. There were times that she made some decisions and she regretted it. She's like, "I'm sorry. Okay, I'm gonna do better." She had a mind that she wanted to live for the Lord, and these were her words, and I brought those words back to her several times. She said, "Whatever you all tell me to do, I am going to do it." And there were times when she did something, I said, "Kiana, you remember you said whatever we tell you, or are you still there? Are you still wanting to be accountable to us? Are you still wanting to follow our leadership?" You know, we talk about some things. I go back to her with an answer. This is what you need to do. This is how you need to do it. This is how you need to do it. And she has been blessed. She has been blessed. And I thank God that this is what I thank God for. See, it's not just my story. See, I can say, "Oh yeah, I started off here," and we hear Apostle Bolden say, "Yeah, my wife started off here and she was a raggedy somebody, and you see her now and she's blessed, but she was a raggedy." So now I'm saying, you know what? I saw her move all the way through this process to where she is now, and it doesn't mean that she doesn't need to grow. She's still growing. She's still maturing. But I'm telling you, I've seen the Lord bless her. And I don't just mean with material things. I mean, he has blessed her to grow spiritually. He has blessed her. Her whole mindset has changed. Whereas before it was all this fight when it came to following, now she just moves easily into it. And so we can say, "Oh, you know," and I was just sharing this with, you know, with the sister the other day. If all you have is, "Lord, I don't like who I am and I want to change." If you would give that to the Lord, he can work with that. But as long as we are justified We're justified in our offense. We're justified in our disappointments. We're justified in our anger. As long as we're justified, we will not grow. Nothing will change. We will continue to be offended. We will continue to be disappointed. We will continue on that same path. So we have to get to the point that we say, you know what, Lord, I am not who I want to be. I am not who you called me to be, but I want to be that. And I say the same way we talked about with Truth Academy. If you will just follow, you will see the results. If you will follow, how many of you worked with the ELs when I had in the curriculum where they were just drawing lines up and down, left and right? That's all they were doing. And what did that turn into? Writing letters and then writing words and then writing sentences. And oftentimes we don't want to go through the just this is 15 minutes of class today. Up, down, left, right, around. Up, down, left, right, around. And oftentimes we don't want to go through that part of the process. But everybody wants to write a book. Well, in order to write the letter T, you have to learn up, down, left, right. You have to learn that. And so let's do that. Let's embrace our femininity. Let's embrace being a helpmeet, and let's just embrace the life that God has called us to, so that we can have this testimony of greatness, of the Lord doing something great for us, and us just simply enjoying life. Just enjoying it. That's all. I promise you it works. It might be hard at first. It might be hard to fathom, Lord, why are we doing this to get this result? Why are we just drawing lines on the paper? Because it takes lines to write letters. It takes circles to write letters. And those letters turn into words, and those words into sentences, and those sentences into books. And so let's be willing to do that. And the last thing I'm going to say, as wives, it is naturally in us to really be giving people. Let's tap into that. We're supposed to naturally be servers. Let's tap into that so that we can serve other people. And remember what I said, how we teach our children to serve. It's so funny. I think some of our sons saw Claire do it today. Papa said, here come, he had his cup. He had a cup for some water and some juice, and he told her, come get this and bring it to Mama. And she went and got it, and she brought it right on over there to me. She'll be 2 years old next month. So it's not too early to start training them. So it would be ridiculous of me to make the same mistake with her that I made 30 years ago, where I'm just doing everything for her, instead of just allowing her to learn. And children love it. They absolutely love it. You see those children at fellowship when they're serving, they have a smile on their faces. They absolutely love serving. We have to show them that. And so let's do that. Let's make sure that we have a heart and a mind to serve others, that we are teaching that to our children, especially our girls. Not only our girls, but especially them, because that's something that will prepare them for marriage. Just remember that, our purpose and our presence in this earth is meant to impact somebody's life positively. And let's make sure we're doing that. People should be happy to see us coming because of something that we've added to them. They should not be bracing because maybe we're always pulling something from them or sucking the life out of them, if you will. So let's do that, and we'll go ahead and bow our heads and pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you, we praise you, and we glorify your name, Lord God, simply because you are worthy. We thank you again for another opportunity to discuss these things that we need for life. We thank you, Heavenly Father, for everything that you've opened up our understanding about. And the things that we don't understand, Lord, we just say today that we accept it and we desire it anyway. And we'll wait for the understanding to come later. Lord, please lead us and guide us throughout this day. In the name of Jesus Christ, we pray. Amen.